This podcast will fail. Mostly because nobody's going to listen to it. And you might prove me wrong. Who knows? And here we are on episode 10 of This Podcast Will Fail. Well, it hasn't failed yet. But it's been 10 days. I've done this every day now, walking through my creative life and trying to understand what I did, why I did it, and why it all failed so many times. It's so dark. What kind of premise is that? So yesterday I talked about my first run at a podcast, and I tried to build a podcast in a more professional space. I tried to talk about the things that I actually know based on my real life career outside of being a content creator. It was interesting to kind of reflect back on just how quickly I ran out of steam on that project. And I think it was the first one that I really kind of built myself up to, right? It's like this return on investment idea. I used to just go into things thinking, oh, I've got this awesome idea. Here we go. Hit record and go. Make it, play it, post it. Woo! What happens, happens. And then over the years, I started thinking, no. You know what? I gotta get my ducks in a row. I've got to plan properly. I've got to prepare things. I've got to understand and do the legwork of building it and following a process and a plan to give this new thing the best chance of success that I can. And I think I realized that when I did that and it ultimately didn't catch on and it sort of failed, I was like, well, then I don't want to play anymore. My constant go-to is the concept of I don't want to play to an empty room. That's been the thing for 15 years now. Is I don't have the patience and the fortitude to sit there and continue to pump out content when nobody's listening or watching, whatever the case may be. Because I've done audio and video, right? But it is interesting because the juxtaposition of that is this podcast, which I walked in knowing, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and make something that nobody's going to watch. And I'm going to understand that, and I'm going to accept that from the beginning, that this is a project that will attract zero attention. I am making it for myself with no expectations, with no planning. I literally came up with the idea to do this podcast in like an hour. The most amount of time I spent was really just researching what platform to try and use, because I had used Podbean and I had tried to understand some of the others, and I don't want to pay for storage space and bandwidth use, and somehow I must have just never known about Anchor. And so I host this thing out of Anchor, and magically Anchor puts it out to all these other places that I assume nobody's listening to. And there's couple few people actually listening to it. But that's okay. I'm not going to call that a success. I'm going to call that an interesting anomaly. That's what I'm going to call it, an interesting anomaly. I feel better so far about this 10 days in because I had no expectations going in. Because I didn't pour my heart and soul into developing and planning. I just spontaneously said, go. And here I am. 10 days later, I'm still going. It's refreshing. I'll just be straight with you. It's kind of rejuvenating me a little bit, right? Because it takes me 20 minutes to sit here in the car on my lunch and talk. It takes me less than an hour to edit this audio and put it into a podcast, make a thumbnail that takes literally 35 seconds to make a thumbnail on Canva. Because I made smart choices immediately, a simplistic format for the thumbnail, a simplistic format for the podcast, stinger and a bumper on the front, bumper on the end. That's it. 20 minutes, get in, get out, make it fit the time, get rid of some of the throat clearing, and occasionally reduce the amount of time between pauses. It's nothing, and it's quick and dirty. Not a lot of time spent on cleaning up the audio or worrying about noise or worrying about any of that stuff, really. I just, whatever, it's cool. And on the weekends, great, I can do it from home with my bedroom set up. Okay, cool. It's refreshing to not have to stress out about the amount of time and effort necessary to produce. That's helping. It's helping. And not having any expectations is helping. I feel free. Like I can say whatever I want. I can go down whatever road I want. It doesn't matter because I don't expect that anybody cares. And I'm so used to reaching that point where people stop caring about the things that I make that this feels different. I have finally started to admit to a few other human beings that this podcast even exists. So I'll run down those people right now. And if those people ever find this damn thing, because I'm not making it easy and I'm not giving anything away. One of them is my 11-year-old daughter. At night after dinner, we tend to hang out with my wife and my daughter and I, and we either watch TV or do a little, family time stuff. And somewhere in the middle of that, I'm usually taking that less than an hour to edit and slap this thing together. Well, she's been there for a lot of the moments when I was listening to things or working on things without headphones on and overheard what I was working on. So she kind of has a vague sense of what I'm doing. And she's been a part of my YouTube life previous, little camera hog whenever I'd let her into a video and things like that. So she's cool. My wife, actually, I don't know if she has any idea what this thing is. And I'll come back to her in just a second. But I actually have two contemporaries at work who I have told about the existence of this podcast without actually telling them what it's called or telling them necessarily how or where to find it. I needed, good. It's hard to shut up sometimes. I get verbal diarrhea. That's my thing. I talk. It's what I do. And I want to share and I want to tell people what I'm up to. And in this case, I have two individuals specifically. One was a colleague that, he and I had a great working relationship, but we built and managed a department together. And just a great guy, and he's dabbling into content creation now after listening to me talk about my YouTube stuff and podcast stuff and trying to start a business stuff for the 3 years or so, almost 4 years that he and I have been working together now. He was someone I felt comfortable opening up to and saying, hey, you know what? Here's what I'm doing, because he knows that my most recent adventure fell apart at the seams before it ever even got off the ground. He knows about that. But again, I didn't tell him what the thing is called or where to find it. So that's interesting. And he hasn't pressed me, which is good. He's starting to kind of dabble in some content creation as well, trying to get his head around the idea of writing something, or he was going to do some adventure filming when he was out on a camping hike with a brother and a friend, and it fall apart, and he wanted me to be his producer. That's an interesting role I'd love to be able to play for someone sometime in my life, and more of the fake it till you make it up as you go along sort of stuff. I'd love to be somebody that is approached by other creators to act in a producer capacity. That would be interesting to me. And that's kind of sort of what he's doing, or what he has done so far, and it's just baby steps. There's nothing really substantive there yet. So I told him about this thing. The other one is someone that I work with now, who he and I co-lead an operations phone team, and he's huge on podcasting. He's a big podcast guy. He's a independent film festival kind of guy. He works on a film festival every year. Has a little bit of an actual radio background, is where I initially met him before he and I started working together. And he's heavy duty podcast dude. In addition to my really heavy duty professional podcast dude. It's like a moniker. You're the podcast dude. Well, you're the original podcast dude over there in Australia. But this guy, he's easier, closer at hand. I see him every single day. So I told him about the nature of this thing, and again, not giving away the name of the podcast, such as to you, non-existent dear listener, at nearly 12 minutes in. I still have not told you my name. I have not told you where I am. I've told you I'm in the United States, and that's about it. That's all I'm gonna do. This is not like The Masked Singer. You're not. I don't think at this point you're ever gonna have me stand up and tell you my name, and tell you where I am, and tell you the names of the actual creative projects I worked on. This is just that ability to reflect and talk through it all. I didn't talk to you about my wife, but she doesn't, I don't think, know about this. I don't think that she's aware of what I've been up to. And I'm sitting there, as we're relaxing at the end of the night, I'm sitting there working on this stuff, and she's right there next to me, and she hasn't heard any of this played out loud. She hasn't asked me what I'm working on. I don't think that she's noticed the thumbnails or the Anchor website, so I don't know. She might know what's happening, and she might not. And this time around, if she knows what's happening, she's not saying anything, which is interesting. So it remains to be seen when and if she becomes the next person that I open up to about what I'm doing with this podcast and why I'm doing it, the psychology behind it, and everything else. So we'll see. I don't know. Who knows? Darling, if you ever find this and you ever listen to this, I'm sorry. I really am. I want to apologize. I've been married to my wife this year, coming up in about a month and a half. We will celebrate our 26th year of marriage. We've been together for almost 28 years. She has sat through every one of my dumbass get-rich-quick schemes. She has supported me. She has pushed me on. She has championed and cheered, and she has been like the best spouse that you could hope for. And I sometimes feel so unbelievably guilty. I really, really do. And, I usually, I think, make her nuts listening to me talk about these new projects ad nauseum over and over. Well, I think I want to do this, but I'm not sure if I should do that. And what do you think about this? And does it make any sense if I do that? And it's not fair, right? She's not a creator, right? She's a mom. She's an academic. She is a quiet, intelligent, a person that's. Listen, I told you that she hosted with me. She co-hosted the radio show for the final most of the last year that we did the show, but she was never comfortable. Once again, she was okay because we weren't on camera and it was just a voice and she wasn't using her real name, and she was comfortable with it to that extent, but I knew it wasn't something that she wanted necessarily to do. She was doing it for me, to help me, and I'm grateful. But I think that if the roles were reversed, and if I heard myself talking up all of this, hyping up all of this, and then to watch me fail over and over and watch me give up and walk away and still remain supportive and never once call me out for my BS is beyond generous. And my God, that woman must love me to put up with me. Whew. She will certainly say otherwise. I know, because that's what she does. And again, I always do all this work to build things up. And when they don't work, I'm crushed and defeated. I'm certainly not special in that regard. I'm not sitting here trying to pretend that I'm some sort of unique victim. I think all, if not most of all, creators in every format, in every possible corner of the creative world, deal with this. And if you're listening, maybe you've dealt with it too. And you might understand where I'm coming from, but you also might sit there and go, good Christ, is this 15 years of failure pity party ever going to end? Well, I can say 10 episodes in that, in fact, yes. This initial run, season 1, 15 years of failure, will end. I will reach that final end point. I don't know when that will be. Every time I think that I'm going to talk about a specific thing, even today, I did not expect nearly 14 minutes in that I was going to go down the road I went down today. That seems to happen a lot. But I've still got a couple of more project-specific pieces that I want to talk about and talk through for myself and with myself. A few more flashes in the pan and moments of inspiration that turned into absolute nothing that I need to explore. So there's more on this. I'm going to guess. All right, I'm going to throw this out there as a guess because I'm 10 episodes in now. I've told you the vast majority of the things I've done and why they didn't work. I have to talk about a little bit of a YouTube resurgence and a book that I wrote last year, 2019. And then the final piece was the project that I started this year in 2020 in February that just was the most embarrassing failure I have ever had to date. And I'm going to get to all that. So I think that there are possibly 10 more episodes in this first season, in this 15 years of failure. I think there's 10 more. So that's not a goal. I'm not setting that up as a goalpost. I'm putting that out there for myself as a sign marker. What is that, like a mile marker, or a possible destination? I guess you gotta have some kind of idea of structure. I don't know if that makes any sense. Doesn't matter. So I think there may be maybe 5 more, maybe 10 more. It depends on how often I find myself rambling about something other than what I intended to talk about for that particular day. So just looking at it here, and yeah, I'm not going to get into I'm not going to get into the YouTube part 3 or 4 or the book yet. I was going to do that today. I was going to tell you about my life in the ketogenic diet. I'm not going to go there yet today, but I think that will be enough for today, and we will see what the future holds for season 1, whether or not it goes another 5 or 10 episodes, how quickly I can get through this pity party nonsense and get onto something else that ultimately no one will listen to. Because if you did start listening at the beginning, I'm pretty sure you're not still here now 20 minutes later, but nonetheless, thank you. I appreciate any time that anybody spends. I truly, sincerely do. And I will talk to you again tomorrow. Have a good one.